And welcome back for another episode. So, let's have a quick look at what's happened between these two episodes again. Not much, of course, but first of all, we did get the incomes again, so we got about 20,000 from our trade deals, and we currently have a little bit of racial wealth, which will allow our manufacturing to work on full speed for a little while. I doubt it's going to last for more than 2 months or so, but even those 2 months might be crucial. Now, of course, the resources are still the same, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but we're basically focusing on getting upgraded parts for our ships right now. And then, in terms of fleets, we are sending, well, first of all, the Caribbean fleet. We've separated some of the smaller ships that will go to Portugal, be there, just to make sure that we still have some protection value in the Caribbean itself. But we are sending in majority of the battleships to, well, Portugal to refuel and resupply, and then go to Philadelphia. And of course we do have the ships coming in from Hudson, and then Labrador Sea, all of which will be joining the colonial fleet, which makes the Navy altogether to be around 100 and something in terms of actual fighting ships, which is not bad if you ask me. Other than that, there's not a huge amount of changes. Response fleet that was in Bay of Biscay is going to go to London, unload any survivors. The ships that require repairs will stay at London to repair, and the rest of them will try to sail towards Philadelphia as well. And of course we will be setting up a bit of a sentry down near the jump point to Bay of Biscay, just so that we can observe if there's any French or Spanish vessels trying to get over here to retaliate against our... Well, actually I'm not sure if they even found out that who sank the ship, but it is pretty obvious that it's either us or the Dutch, so they'll probably be sending here. And the plan is that if we spot an invasion fleet, because we've had some intel indicating that they might be planning a similar raid on London, so we'll have the scouts there just so that we can see the enemy fleets if they are moving in, to hopefully have enough time for the Dutch to actually reach London to aid in defending, because we don't want to lose London, or the defences, or the shipyards in London. In terms of diplomatic updates, there hasn't really been anything new, and we haven't actually set up any new colonies yet. As far as, well, I mean, we do have the one in Lancashire, but since we don't have the colony ships in the region, that kind of hinders the progress there. But that's about it for the intro here, so I will bring you guys back in just a few moments. Our response fleet is just about to exit the Bay of Biscay, but we have spotted a Spanish ship here. We don't know exactly what ship it is, but I suspect it is civilian shipping due to the size and the speed. Now we've separated our brakes from the fleet, and they'll go after that and then regroup with the fleet in London. And then any ship that is not in need of repairs will be sent across the Atlantic towards Philadelphia. We managed to sink the freighter, we'll pick up the survivors and take them to London. The North Fleet from St. John's has now arrived in Philadelphia and joined the colonial fleet. Now there's 68 fighting vessels already in there, plus there's some ships still approaching from the north and from the south, meaning that there's going to be over 100 ships total once everything has arrived defending Philadelphia, which hopefully will be enough to repel any invaders, should they arrive. We have spotted a French fleet in the Caribbean, while our Caribbean fleet is currently heading north towards Philadelphia, but it would appear that first of all there doesn't seem to be any first rates in that, so they should not have the same spotting range as we do right now. They are slower, so they have some support vessels with them most likely. Unfortunately, it would appear that it is the same, at least most of the ships are the same that were in the raid of Port Royal. So it would appear that they've left from Tortuga, and I think they're heading towards Havana. That seems like a logical location, because if they were heading towards Philadelphia right now, we would not have seen them, I don't think. But As I said, they do not have the spotting range as we do, so we can still divert course and not be spotted by them. But if this fleet is heading northwest to Havana, it is very likely that the next attack is going to be north. So it's a very good thing that we are moving fleets to Philadelphia. Now, considering the size of this fleet, what we do know... We zoom in a little bit so we can actually see all the text there. So, looking at this fleet, we do know that they don't have any first rates. They do have 4 second rates, which is quite a bit, and then presumably there is 9 third rates. These are probably support vessels. Then there's 8 fourth rates, make that 9 in total actually, and then a fair bit of fifth rates. They might have some smaller ships there as well. We cannot see them yet because they're just within our range, and anything smaller than 5th rate is going to be harder to spot from our crow's nests. But we'll try to slip past them without getting noticed. The Hudson fleet has now arrived in Philadelphia, and the Caribbean fleet is currently a bit more than a month away. It currently has still 10 days to actually enter the region, and then from there it's going to take about 26 days to sail from the entrance to Philadelphia. But I should get there soon enough. The response fleet has now arrived back in London from its raiding in Bay of Biscay. The ships that were damaged before the raids are now going to stay in London to be repaired, but the rest of the fleet will head across the Atlantic to Philadelphia. Hopefully they'll get there in time before any attacks happen, but I'm not entirely sure about that. A Caribbean fleet has now arrived in Philadelphia, so most of our fleets that are heading there are already there. There's of course some of the ships are heading across the North Atlantic as we speak, or at least they should be heading there. So we do have the brigs already fairly far, but the rest of the response fleet is still in North Sea, so it will take a little while to get there. I completed the research on the thicker armor, so we now decided to get a bit better optics again with the active ground sensor strength 12, which is going to give us a bit more spotting range, as well as we can now start redesigning a lot of the ships that we have, since we do have the better sails and better gunpowder storages. Not all of them yet, we're still working on quite a few of them, but some of them we can already start doing quite a bit. And now, for example, if we have a look at the 5th rate and update the armor, it's gonna give us almost 10% extra space in there, so we can put in a lot more here, maybe a bit more firepower, or especially we're still working on the faster reload, which means that once we do that we're gonna need a bit bigger gunpowder storing, which is not necessarily all that bad. But yes, there's a lot of things that we're gonna do with new ships, so I'll be designing them a little bit. They're not quite finished yet, I don't think, but once they are, I will of course show them in its entirety. Right, so I went ahead and redesigned the 5th rate. It can now go almost 7 knots, and it has the same thickness of armor, but of course we now increase the deployment time to a whole year, and the range is now 45 billion kilometers, which is decent. It's still not like good enough for going anywhere you want, but it certainly allows us to move the ships pretty much freely across the Atlantic at least. It does have the vertical gun controls, of course, and then it does have the better gunpowder storage and all that, so basically this ship is ready to be built already. We did also add in some capacity for marines there, so you can have a section of marines in there, which should help in case the enemy starts boarding them. And of course the maintenance life is still well over a decade, so it should be able to last for a while. We did also increase the maintenance supply points to a degree. It's not necessarily a huge increase, but it's still an increase to the previous one. I mean, if we compare, for example, the speed and the maintenance time, the maintenance life increased by 3 years and the speed increased by a bit over a knot, which is not bad. We didn't increase the firepower or anything like that on this variant, but once we do get the faster reload, we of course need to then get the better cannons and all that, but I'm sure that we can then Maybe at least for the ships of the line we'll have those extra firepower and maybe even the heavy frigates. This one still needs the gunpowder stockpile 10, which we have not quite yet finished designing. So yeah, that's gonna take a while. Not a long while, mind you, but a little while. One of our civilian trading ships was sunk outside Tortuga. It was heading towards Port Royal, but unfortunately that was actually pretty much our only freighter. We only have some colony ships now, which is not great. But on the other hand, at least we have some colonies moving around still. A large enemy fleet has been spotted approaching Philadelphia. It is up to you men to defend the city, for if Philadelphia falls, so falls the Great Britain. We have of course sent word for our allies that this is going to happen. We've also sent the commercial vessels already out of the harm's way, but we will stand and fight here. The battle is about to start. Our goal will be to destroy as many enemy ships as possible. While they can still retreat from the battle, we cannot make as many enemy ships flee as possible, and then tipping the scale in our favour. This battle will be costly, but it will be for the greater good. Our coastal fortifications have opened fire. We've only scored one hit so far, but that is about to change soon, because the enemy fleet is almost within range of our ships as well. The first salvos have been fired. Unfortunately, we took a few hits more than they did, but so far it's still early battle, anything can happen. The enemy fleet has now reached a point where all of their ships can fire, so the battle line is being organized there. So far we've taken a fair bit of damage, a light damage, but a lot of our ships have taken damage now. And there's at least one ship that has already had a second layer of armor damaged, but I think we can withstand at least for a while. Now that the enemy has set the battle line, we've taken about twice the hit that they have. We have forced at least 3 of the enemy ships to retreat already, and so far they have not managed to penetrate any of the armors on our ships. As far as I can tell, we have taken a lot of damage on a lot of them, but so far no internal damage at least, not even in the smaller ships. Now of course some of the bigger ships have taken a lot of damage, but luckily they have a strong armor so they can withstand the fight for a little bit longer at least. And the more ships that we can drive that away from the enemy side, the better it is for us. Of course, that does mean that we will be destroying a bit less of the enemy ships, but we have informed the Dutch about this battle, and they have already sent a fleet to intercept the enemy fleets that might be going back to Caribbean. One of our second raids has taken heavy hits. Not only did they lose 2 of their masts, but also a large chunk of their cannons were caught in an explosion. However, we must not give up the fight. One of our brigs has taken some internal damage already, but so far that only makes 2 ships that have taken that, whereas another 4 enemy ships are retreating from the battle. A couple more enemy ships are retreating from the battle. So far, only the 2 ships indicated before have had penetration damage taken. However, a lot of our ships are very badly damaged already, but considering the speed that the enemy is withdrawing the troops, we might actually win this. It's going to be costly, but at least we might be able to push them out from the battle here. After another massive salvo from the enemy fleet, another one of our second raids has taken some significant damage. However, quite a few of the enemy ships have started retreating, so we just need to outlast them for long enough, but I'm not sure if we can manage that. Hopefully, but a lot of the ships have taken serious damage on the armor, especially the second raids have been under fire quite a bit. And although over here was mostly a lucky shot, quite frankly, this one has taken serious damage as well, and then there's the brig over here that has taken a little bit damage. But it's only one of the cannons, so although it does lower our rate of fire, it shouldn't be too bad. While a lot of enemy ships are retreating from the battle, they have finally managed to penetrate the armor on one of our first raids, as well as some of the other 2 second raids and first raids have taken very heavy damage. So it is only a matter of time before some of these start sinking. Several of our ships have lost 1 or more masts, and they are now grouped up in a separate fleet there, but a lot of our bigger ships have had components destroyed one way or another, so it is likely just a matter of time before we start losing ships. Luckily, we've done certainly a lot of damage on the enemies, and a huge amount of, well, significant amount of their ships have already started retreating. And we are still doing a decent bit of damage. But as we can see, there's a huge conga line of ships retreating from the battle. Unfortunately, the enemy broadsides are still very strong. But hopefully our coastal fortifications can still hammer enough of those ships that they will give up the fight. One of our secondaries has been sunk, as well as several of our ships have been demasted now. This situation starts to look rather desperate for us. We have lost another 2 ships. We have destroyed one of the enemy ships, but it's only a frigate, so currently the situation doesn't look great. A lot of our ships have been badly damaged, but I'm pretty sure that the enemy ships are rather well damaged as well, so we'll see. Even if we lose this fight, it is very unlikely that the enemy ships will stay here for long. We have lost another first rate and another second rate ship. At the same time, we have destroyed another 2 ships from the enemy side, so it is clear that the enemy is starting to crumble as well. And we still have our coastal fortifications firing upon the enemy. They have not been damaged at all. Unfortunately, our fleet is starting to be in rather bad shape. We have lost yet another 3 ships of the line, 1 of each rate. We have sunk 1 more enemy frigate, but this seems to be very much a lost fight at this point. We have lost another 10 ships. We have sunk a few of the enemy ships, but things are looking grim. We have almost lost half of our ships now. We have sunk about 20 of the enemy ships, plus about 20 of the enemy ships that run away, but there's still probably around 90 ships remaining on the enemy side, which means that they outnumber us almost 2 to 1 now. Only 9 of our ships remain, whereas the enemy still has well over 90 ships. Fortunately, the coastal fortifications are still up, and at this point we will start firing upon the smaller ships first, just to make sure that we can destroy as many ships as possible. Now, of course, the amount of damage that we have dealt with for the enemy, repairing all those ships will take a long while. However, still a lot less than building a new fleet. The last defending ship has been sunk. Luckily, we have been able to sink quite a few of the smaller ships already. I don't know if the enemy has a similar situation as us, that the vertical fire controls are one of the frigates, or some of the frigates. It might be possible for us to stop them firing on the fortifications, although what we can see, it is actually a 4th rate that has it, so it is very unlikely that we'll actually manage that. But at least we have sunk a lot of their ships now. Our coastal fortifications have now fallen. We did manage to sink quite a few of the enemy's smaller ships, but there are still some that remain, and the enemy has essentially destroyed our shipyards here already. This was a devastating defeat, but I'm sure that the enemy fleets will be crippled for a while. The enemy fleets are finally leaving from Philadelphia, so we'll go in with our commercial ships and rescue any survivors. Unfortunately, we did lose the entire fleet there, which is a devastating blow to our actions in the New World, so it is up to the Portuguese and the Dutch to turn the tide right now. It would appear that we spotted some French support vessels in the American East Coast territory, which are responsible. That was heading for Philadelphia to aid in defense first, but then once that fell, it was going there to refuel and then head north to link up with our remaining fleets in Hudson, which is not a lot of ships to be fair, but to at least aid defending over there if possible, or maybe do some small strikes on the enemy. But this is a juicy target, because that's likely going to, well, considering how much destruction we did to the enemy fleets, they might be running out of fuel before they even get out of the American East Coast territory. So if we destroy these ships, that will potentially delay their repairs for another month or 2. So yes, we will certainly try to destroy those ships, and then we'll probably divert our course a little bit to somewhere like here, and then go to the Philadelphia to refuel. And then we'll try to head towards the north, although we may need to take a bit of a detour along the coast here instead of the direct route. Just since well, we don't know which direction the enemy ships are heading, but judging from the heading of this fleet, They seem to be heading to north, because I suspect that they're trying to intercept the other fleet. Although I could be mistaken. And there we go, we managed to sink all 3 of them. Of course, since they didn't have any guns, we didn't take any casualties. We are picking up the survivors, and then we're going to take a slight detour, just to not be on the straight line towards Philadelphia, just in case the French try to intercept us there. Of course, our brigs here, well, yeah, we had 4 brigs on this battle, and they are incredibly fast, so even if they do intercept us, we can just outrun them, assuming we don't run out of fuel, of course, which we don't have a huge amount, but we're not that far away. So we'll pick up the survivors and then head back to Philadelphia. Yeah, judging from the direction, they were heading towards the Gulf of St. Lawrence by the looks of it, so that's probably where the French fleet is heading as well. So what I'll try to do, assuming that the enemies run out of fuel, because they took a lot of heavy damage, so it's very likely that some of them are very low on fuel, or rations. We might be able to get to Philadelphia, refuel there, then go around the coast here, and then try to take out any support vessels that they might send in. Of course, it is also possible that they'll send support vessels from the south instead, but according to the Dutch will take care of that, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. We have now researched the faster reload, so we've started designing new cannons, including the 10-pounders, which will be very useful for our ships of the line. And of course, then frigates will be using most likely the 8-pounders, and the brigs and sloops will continue using the 6-pounders, because they probably don't need all that much firepower anyway, but if they can shoot more frequently, that's always going to be good. We have completed construction naval headquarters in Madras, in India, and now we started building a bit more mines there. Although they do not gain all minerals there, but they can at least get a decent bit of certain minerals. We have finally got our hands on the new 10-pounders, which we have already placed on our new 2nd and 3rd rates. And now those 2 designs are complete. So if we have a quick comparison of the 2nd rate first, so the firepower does increase a little bit, although the amount of weapons technically speaking goes down, but the range is higher, the damage is much higher, and the rate of fire is actually also higher. So all in all, it's pretty good. It does increase the speed by about 200 kilometers per second, so about 1 knot. And the maintenance life goes up quite a bit, and the fact that we have thicker armor, or the armor rating is the same, but there's more room in the ship itself now, so our deployment time has been increased to a full year instead of 9 months. And maintenance supplies and such have gone up. The range is notably higher, almost twice as high, so these ships will be able to operate on a much more versatile roles. For the 3rd rate, there's pretty similar changes. The speed is about same upgrade there, and the range is also not quite as big, but it's still quite substantial. And the deployment time is again a full month. The amount of weaponry is a little bit higher, so not only will it fire quicker, but it also does more damage per hit. Although technically speaking, the amount of weapons does go down, or the weapon groups does go down, but still it will be much better. All in all, these 2 new designs, although we have already designed some of the smaller ships, but we may need to do them again once we get access to their respective cannons. So for frigates, so 4th and 5th rates, that's going to be the new 8-pounders, and for 6th and 7th rates, it's going to be the new 6-pounders. And we are researching them. It shouldn't take too long until we can redesign these more or less, but that's probably going to be the start of next year. But with these, we have already started redesigning the shipyards, but that is going to take until next summer until we can actually start building these new ships there. So there's a bit of a delay there, but once we do get those new 2nd and 3rd rates up and running and fighting the French, then we should have the upper hand in the engagements, assuming that the enemy doesn't still have a huge, overwhelming numbers. And there we have it, that's another year. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very good year for us. We lost a huge chunk of our fleet. I believe about half of our fleet, actually, in total. And we have brought in the response fleet now back to Philadelphia. We did take some of the fleets, or the brigs that we had here that did sink the enemy support vessels while heading to Philadelphia. They are now in St. John's in Lambert Sea right now. But the plan is to combine the fleets in Hudson, because Hudson seems to be a place that we can actually make into a pretty decent place. It's a bit off to the side, but it has a lot of resources, and it can be made into a rather large industrial base, and maybe get some shipbuilding going on over there and such. But yeah, we do need to gather up our troops a little bit in here right now. We are of course trying to defend London in case they try to attack there. We do have a fleet in North Sea trying to keep an eye on the jump point there. Not directly on the jump point, of course, but it should actually, it can see the jump point itself. So if the enemy tries to get here, we can see that, and we can then alert the Dutch to bring in their fleet to help defend London. Or we can try to shadow them a little bit to see where they are heading. But anyway, we might be able to combine our forces with the Dutch fleet here, which is quite sizable, to be honest. I think the Dutch fleet is probably now the largest fleet, considering that the French lost a fair bit of ships as well. Now, in terms of the researches, we're currently still finalizing the final mast, so once we get the flagship mast, we can actually redesign our first rates, or complete the design of those, and we've actually made some significant changes there. We've gotten rid of the chaser cannons, and we put in more of the 10-pounder cannons there, and then instead of just one broadside, we'll have 2 broadsides, so we can fire on 2 different targets. And I think that's going to be working quite fine, especially with the increased damage output from the 10-pounders. Those first rates are going to be beasts, and something that I've actually looked into is the first rates have about 25% more total armor points compared to the second rates. So the first rates are pretty good tanking vessels. But anyway, we are getting the cannon upgrades as well. Then we're getting the maintenance support per facility up. In Philadelphia, we are researching the active grav sensor strength 12, and in Portugal, we're getting the thermal sensor sensitivity. And actually, I think we should probably over here, just doing it live now, so we are going to get the EM sensor sensitivity added to the queue as well. Now, this is going to take a while, but it's alright. We are building a lot of mostly regular stuff. In Philadelphia, we're building another shipyard complex just so that we can, if need be, repair a little bit there. Maybe we should try to get that at least to be able to build our brigs. And eventually we'll keep on expanding or rebuilding this, because Philadelphia has a pretty good industrial base and it has all the minerals that it requires for the most part. So we can rebuild it. It's going to take a while, but we can rebuild it. And then in Port Royal, unfortunately, we are missing some minerals. We might be able to get them from elsewhere, but it might take a while. But other than that, the majority of the things are not particularly different from previous builds. I mean, we are still building some of the fuel harvesters, but that's almost done, so start of next year we'll start something else here. Maybe get more research labs, honestly. Speeding up the research would be useful. In terms of shipbuilding, the only place that we can currently build ships is London, and we are building a lot. Also, we are repairing some of the ships here still. For some reason, I had not repaired them before, but they are now under repairs. And then we are building pretty much as much ships as possible. We're trying to expand slipways over there and retooling some of the shipyards for the second and third rate. The first rate will be retooled as soon as we get the flagship masts. The design is almost complete, it just requires the better mast and then put in a bit extra fuel and such. But it should be pretty good design. At least it has a lot of firepower. In terms of minerals, we are gaining a decent amount of most of them. Food is the lowest one, but that is because we're turning that into rations, so that is to be expected. In terms of wealth, we are gaining... well, we're currently having a deficit, but that is because I've just decided to stop producing maintenance supplies in most of our ports. So that should drop probably by at least 1,000, maybe more. So that's gonna make sure that we start getting some profit, and also because of the 5 trade deals that we have, we're gonna get about 20,000 extra wealth at the start of the next episode. So therefore we'll have our economy fixed, and we should be gaining money as well. So we should be able to build at least a lot quicker than, well, at least a little bit quicker than before. We're currently sitting at around 69%. It's probably going to go up to 70, or would go to 70 rather quick, naturally, I think. But yeah, it's going to hit 100 and probably stay there for the rest of the game, hopefully. We still only have one civilian mining colony over here. It does have a decent production, and we are going to be picking up these resources now regularly, taking them back to Philadelphia currently. We have not started any new colonies yet. We do have the Lacaducy A1, but since we don't have colony ships in here, getting them in here would take a long while, so we're not going to be focusing on that right now, and the war is probably going to be our priority anyway. In terms of shipping lines, we have a total of 4 colony ships, and that's all. Unfortunately, we did lose at least one of the freighters that we had due to presumably French in Caribbean, but the colony ships are still doing alright. All in all, this year was not great for us, although what we've heard from the Dutch is that while we did lose in Philadelphia quite drastically, the Dutch did get a bit of a revenge on the French, and it's likely going to take a long while for them to actually repair that entire fleet. Now, we are fairly certain, from what we've heard, that the ships were heading towards Quebec to repair, so technically if we could gather up a strong enough force, we might be able to go and raid that, but unfortunately the Dutch fleet is currently going to have to repair as well. So there's going to be a bit of a lull period in the war, most likely, for the time being. Time to rebuild, I guess. But that's about it for this episode, so make sure to check out Midge's channels, links are down below in the description. We'll be seeing you next time, whenever that is.